Hey, what's up, universe? Welcome to episode 29 of It's a Choice. And as you can tell, well, if you're watching this video, you can tell, but if you're listening, you're not going to be able to tell. You might hear some background noise, but this podcast episode is going to be called Conversations with Milo, Part 1. And I don't know if there'll be multiple parts or not. And so Milo, my youngest son, is going to be the guest today, and I asked him if he would be willing to be part of the podcast because he and I have some really awesome conversations, I feel, and I know a few of you are interested in kind of hearing it from the horse's mouth, kind of seeing what that's like. And over the last handful of days, Milo's asked me some pretty good questions, so I thought, we'd kind of just talk about that or get into it. So as you guys know from the previous one or two episodes, that I finished the book, Awareness by Anthony de Mello, and Milo has read some of this book, and that's where some of his questions have come from. And so I was asking him just a minute ago, how far he's made it, and then realized I actually wasn't recording. And so so Milo, you want to say hey, or you want to say hey?
Hello.
Thanks for being a part of this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So how far have you made it into the book?
I think I'm still not at page 20.
Yeah. So that's pretty good, because I know that you read that one paragraph a lot. And so one of the questions you asked me, one of the first questions you asked me the other day, because I tell you I love you every night, when we're done playing games and everything. And I remember waking up, I think, and you had asked me, can I truly love you, right? And I asked you, what made you ask, right? And I had an idea. I had an inkling on where that came from, and you said it was from this book, Awareness. And so we spoke about that. And I would read you guys the messages from Discord, but I can't switch between my phone and Discord while I'm recording a video. And Milo's phone is about dead, so we'll just kind of rehash the conversation. I don't remember exactly everything I said, but do you remember? Oh, you don't remember either. And so I'm pretty sure that parts of that conversation were about, I definitely love you because I don't want to change you, right? That's part of how, what As Awareness talks about is because you'd asked me if I could truly love you because of, being in love with the idea of somebody. And isn't that how you fall out of love, is because your idea changes, because in Awareness, he talks about most of the time people are in love with their prejudiced idea of somebody instead of who that person is, allowing that person to just be and loving them for who they are and letting that full expression of the universe through that person just be what it is all the time, not wanting to change that person, right? And I think Osho, which you haven't read, there's a book called Osho, The Book of Secrets. I'm pretty sure maybe it's in this book, about how wanting to change somebody is actually really selfish. And that was a new way for me to start looking at it after reading Awareness, is when I want somebody to behave or show up a certain way, then that's me wanting that person to change to fit my reality, what I want reality to be, rather than really just accepting reality for what it is and just having that person be however they show up. So anyway, that was a kind of a long answer, but I usually give you long answers. You usually tell me thanks for the Harry Potter books, right? Yeah, you're gonna nod your head, huh? So what did you ask me this morning? Do you remember? No? You can speak. It's okay. People are going to be listening to this and not necessarily, they don't even see you in the video because you're not leaned over. We have to lean over. I'm not going to say anything. So this morning, Milo had asked me if I choose happiness over everyone, right? Does that trigger the memory for you? What else did you ask me?
I asked also even your loved ones.
Yeah. Do I choose happiness even over everyone that I love? Right? And do you remember what I told you this morning?
No, because you sent me all the Lord of the Rings movies, all the Harry Potter script and books. You sent me, like, it was so long. I got 2 separate icons of your Discord image. That's how long it was, dude. Like, Discord was like, please stop.
You don't remember any of it?
Kind of.
Well, let's talk about like what you remember, like even if it's pieces of it. Like go for it, because people are gonna want to hear you talk. I've been talking for a long time, as you know. So go ahead and jump in, kiddo.
I don't know necessarily. Like, you said yes, you would choose happiness over everybody, including your loved ones, because it would be selfish of other people wanting that not to be what that, right? And
It's okay. There's no right or wrong here. You can just go with what you remember. Like
I don't necessarily remember a whole lot. So,
I spent all that time writing
yeah,
you.
I know. If you would have sent such long responses, I could actually remember it.
I'm just kidding with you. Yeah. Well, what I'd sent you before was, what I sent you this morning was about, like, yeah, I would choose happiness, even over my loved ones, because they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? Like, you know, because love and happiness are related, but they're not related in the same way that we have necessarily been taught that they're related, right? I remember that. So, and how it's been modeled, you know, to us in our society and culture and the way we've been programmed through, you know, a lot of the different ways, like how things are typically modeled to us in our societal roles and just in our cultures. So happiness, like, as I said to you earlier, was like not like dependent upon something outside of me, right? Like, so you are not inside of me. Like, you are your own sovereign individual, like you're your own person. And therefore my happiness does not lie within you. Like, my happiness has to come from inside of me. And same thing like with love, right? Like, my love has to come from within inside of me. I have to love myself first, right? I spoke about that to you, about how we can't pour from an empty cup. So if I don't love myself, then I can't really love somebody else. And that, you know, that the two, like, you can't have either one of these things like depend on something external from you, because as soon as you do that, then you depend on that person or that thing, right? So if my happiness came from you, or it came from somebody, or it came from something, then I asked you, what happens when that thing changes, right? I said, because everything changes in this world, you know, nothing remains the same. I told you about the saying that we're never in the same river twice, like you're never in the exact same water ever, you know? So I can't have my happiness or my love depend on something that's outside of me, because what happens when those things change, you know? Then all of a sudden my love or my happiness could change with everything that's outside of my control. So both of those have to come from inside of me. So it's not the way that it's modeled to us here, you know, like primarily is that, like, you say you love somebody, and like you, like in this book, I don't know if you've gotten to it yet, but it talks about like how you know, would you have me sacrifice my happiness like for your love? And they're like, yeah. And be like, great, so you would sacrifice your happiness for my love? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, great, so we're in love, but we're both extremely unhappy, you know? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But that's kind of how we're kind of taught, you know, where like the external fills us up, you know, like, because somebody else loves me, then I feel love, you know, rather than being like, I feel love, so now I get to share it with somebody, you know, because the love actually comes from inside of me. I have love to give rather than love to take. You know, there's a difference. We didn't necessarily get into that from what I sent you earlier. So what else have you gotten to in the book? Like, So you've gotten to like page 20, you said?
A little bit behind that. If I took it real quick.
Is there anything else that stuck out to you?
I mean, kind of,
Yeah, like here, this is what I mean here, right? The happiness is in them. Yeah, like my happiness is not in you. It has to be inside of me.
I mean, no, I didn't necessarily, like, I got back to that trust and love thing again.
So what about that?
I also got to the part that it stuck out to me, it just didn't stick with me, like, the trust and love. About, like, when you're sick of your own sickness, and, like, how when you're insane, you could actually be sane, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yes, being sane in an insane world, right?
What does that mean?
Intro. I just wrote the intro text. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like right behind page 20. I
Gotcha.
think I read this. I read that part. I think I'm like right here.
Okay. So you're on page 18 or 19?
I'm on page 19.
Yeah.
The Masquerade of Charity.
Yes. The Masquerade of Charity. Yeah.
I have a bookmark, so I don't know where I am most of the time.
That's all right. So I know one thing too I was gonna like mention and to see like if you kind of wanted to chat about, because you've asked me about this too, and some other people might be interested just because of like your age. Like, how old are you?
I'm 12.
Yeah, that's one thing that.
Do you not know that?
No, I know that. I just want you to answer the question for the audience. You know what I mean? Like, it's not for me; it's for them.
How old are you? I'm 12. Oh, you're 12? Oh, okay.
I forgot. No. So anyway, like because of your age, I mean, I think there's definitely some. I know for a fact that some people have been pretty interested and thought it was cool that you are into the stuff that you're into with this kind of thing. But also, I mean, you've had some fear, right? That you've kind of spoke to me about. Is it okay to talk about some of that? Yeah. So, like, what have you been afraid of, like, here kind of recently, maybe over the last week or two that we've kind of talked about?
Death.
Yeah, about death. Yeah. So, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, kind of, tell them what you've told me about, like, what your fears were, or things that you remember us kind of talking about?
Well, I mean, like, it was kind of just dying. That was, like, the main fear for a little bit. And then, like, it kind of grew out, like, maybe not being able to say my goodbyes, or, like, being able to be, like, alive, awake, before I die, you know? And then, like, you know, just not being able to say my last words to the people I love.
So, do you remember anything that I said to you about when you asked about that, or when you expressed your fears?
I remember one part that didn't really help, but it didn't really affect me either. It was like, well, when you're dead, you're just like, he didn't say that, but like, you're like, when you're dead, you can't fear it because you're dead. You're like,
It's no longer your concern because you're dead, right? Yeah. Mourning is for the living. Yeah. Like, grief is for the living.
Well, I mean, do you truly ever die?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though, is like once you transition, some people like to just use the word transition because, right, like there's definitely, depending on what people choose to believe, this idea of like, yeah, maybe you don't ever really die, right? Like energy can't be destroyed, so it just gets transmuted into something else, right? I've thought about this for a long time. Like when I was in college, I was thinking about like how if people don't really die, then I'm probably just driving over them on the road because they're probably part of the concrete or the asphalt that I'm driving on, or they might be the rubber in the tires that, who knows, right? Like who knows where their energy went. So I just thought about that to be silly, but right, yeah. I mean, that's a $1 million question right there. Is, you know, a lot of people have that question, like where do we go, like when we die, and that kind of a thing. So do you remember anything else, or you just remember that one part that you're like, that's not helpful, Dad, like that was totally thanks?
Maybe a little bit, because like the rest helped, kind of.
Man, if only we had a phone that wasn't dead, that had Discord that we could go back on, huh?
I know, maybe your phone should have been so dead.
My phone's not dead, it's recording the show. And since I'm doing a video, I can't get to Discord or else it stops recording.
As a wise man once said, that must suck.
Who was that wise man? You? Indeed. Perhaps it does suck a little bit. So, you don't... Alright, that's cool if you don't remember everything else that I said, because I can't remember everything I said about that either. Because that was a little while ago.
Why? Because you sent me The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movie over text? Yeah, that's probably why.
No.
I think it is. The books and the scripts. Like, you're like, here you go. You wanted this.
Well, you did ask. So.
Yeah. Not for the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies, though.
You asked me a question. I gave you my answer. So, anything else, I suppose, that you want to say? We can kind of keep this episode short. My last episode was like 58 minutes, you know, and I know that everybody's got, you know, other things they may want to do, which I really appreciate people listening to any and all of my podcasts, and especially when it's a big time investment like 58 minutes. But this one we can kind of keep shorter for sure. Is there anything else you wanted to say, or?
Doesn't bother me. If you have any more questions, then we can talk.
Well, you're the one that with some questions, so I thought, is there anything else you wanted to ask? Not right now.
I mean, I don't really remember all the questions I've asked, or like have any questions in mind.
That's fine. Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me and being open to, you know, chatting with me and to my currently small audience. Who knows if this will blow up? Maybe it'll blow up because you decided to talk. Maybe I'll get like 30 more followers or something like that. All because I had a 12-year-old as a guest who happened to be my son, asking amazing questions. All right, well, I have an outro too, like for the podcast. So I always tell people, say, all right, well, I'm going to wrap it up. And say thank you, of course, for listening. And I'm going to put the ask out there again. Sometimes I remember to do this, sometimes I don't. I'm not always the best yet at it. Where I say, if you found this podcast helpful, please share it with somebody, because if you found it helpful, it's very possible they may as well. So please share if you know anybody that may enjoy this episode. And then the outro that I do remember is to ask people to do this. I tell them, I say this. I go, all right, so go live an inspired life so you can inspire others to live their authentic and inspired life. Because at the end of the day, living an inspired life is a choice. And I say, all right, I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Hey, universe. So just want to mention that right after Milo and I stopped recording the video, he totally opened up and continued talking. So I kind of got a little sneaky on my phone and just started recording the audio and set the phone in my car while we had the rest of our conversation. So the second half of this podcast is that audio recording. And as you find out, and as I told Milo, I recorded that and he was totally cool. I let him know that I recorded it. But I just wanted to put this here in the middle so that way you knew like had an explanation anyway for this next part coming up. All right, so here we go.
It's like, well, that depends on the meaning you put behind it.
And what did he say?
He asked me, like, I don't know. He, like, what was your biggest feat accomplished? And by that, I don't know what he necessarily meant. Like, games or something.
So, well, feat, like F-E-A-T is another word for accomplishment. Like, I don't know, do you think that's what he may have meant?
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that's the feat word he meant.
So
I just told him the same thing.
Like, what are you making it mean? Like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm. And then I get dropped off at the church, and there's another kid, and he lives like right by that bus stop, and I felt like he was flexing on me, because he was like, well, my house is like all the way down there to the left or right, and he was like, I got a Wii, you know, I got like Lego Star Wars, Final Fantasy VII remastered, something like that. And in my mind I was like, is this man flexing on me? And then after we're done talking, I was walking home, and I was like, alright, let's count the stuff I have. And I did that in my mind, and I don't know if that was like mean. Yeah.
Well, you're not for sure exactly what he was meaning, right? By him telling you that?
Yeah, no, he was like picking at his finger, like, which made me feel like he was flexing even more. Like, he was so sure that he just had like the better stuff than what I had.
Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he was wanting you to play with him. There's other interpretations, right? Because you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky. It could be tricky.
But what if I don't want to hang out with him?
No, that's fine. You don't have to. I'm just offering up that maybe there's other interpretations with what he was trying to say to you. So that's all. That's one of the fun exercises from, like, you know, TCP, is to like find something, like, what's your initial interpretation, and then like what's 7 other ways that you can interpret that thing. You know, well, what are 7 other meanings you could give it? Like, I did that when I bought this car, and I was doing a Facebook Live, like, into the group while I was driving, which totally don't do that, and like nobody should do that. I was being irresponsible. And there were comments on my live where people were like, hey, be careful, you know, and my first response was like, oh shit, like, these people are kind of like, you know, maybe criticizing me, or maybe they think less of me, or like maybe they're judging me because I'm doing something that is unsafe, you know, I'm being irresponsible, you know. And I was like, but that's kind of a negative spin, right? You know, it's casting me in a negative light. And granted, I wasn't being responsible, but at the same time, I don't have to like whoop my ass over it, you know, like, it's not going to do any good to do that, especially since it's in the past. So I had to sit with, like, how am I going to interpret this? And I was able to like go through a couple different ways of interpreting it, and I finally settled on like, oh, they're just telling me that because they want me to be safe, because they care about me, not because they're judging me or criticizing me. They're legitimately telling me this because they actually care about me, and they're like, yo man, just be safe, like, you know, like, be careful, like, don't do that. What are you doing?
Just checking the time. It's
7:36.
Yeah. I could read that.
Sorry. I am recording this too.
You are?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's what you were doing.
Yeah, because you opened up after we weren't recording the video. It was so much more natural, you know? Like, so I figured, like, I've wanted to do this for a while, just capture our conversations, like, just candid ass conversations. Like, I don't know if I'll tack this on at the end of the podcast or not, but like maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Keep it in your special journal.
My special journal. I do audio journals. Not every day, but when I feel called to do them, I certainly do. So
I mean, if you're recording this, then I might as well ask you a couple of questions that I just now remembered I had.
Yes, please do.
So, like, in the awareness book, there's, like, readiness and, like, listening. And I don't completely understand what they mean by that.
Do you remember the page, like, where it's at?
No. Real helpful, I know. But it's the second step. I know that.
Oh, right here. It says the first step is the readiness to admit that you don't want to wake up. The second step is the readiness to understand, to listen, to challenge your whole belief system. So, like, what is it that you're not clear on regarding that?
Like, both. Like, what does he mean by readiness and listening? Like, how do I listen? How do I become ready?
So the first step, like what he's saying here, is the first step
was to admit
that you don't want to wake up. Yeah, most people don't want to wake up, and what Anthony or Tony, the author of the book, what he means by that.
Anthony de Mello.
Yeah, but he goes by Tony. Most people that have first names Anthony's, they usually go by Tony for short. Like, same thing with Tony Robbins. Is Anthony Robbins is a name, but Tony. Yeah. But anyway, like, what the first step he's talking about here is like, just to admit that it's way more comfortable, and it just is, it's way more comfortable to, like, be asleep and to just kind of go through life, like, on autopilot, and to, like, not stop and look at stuff, like, to be aware, to, like, really kind of, like, analyze yourself, because it's uncomfortable when you start to do that. You start to see pieces of yourself that are not the most flattering. You start to see how you show up, or how you used to show up. Like, once you become more aware of yourself, you change how you show up. But, like, there's this whole process of self-evaluation and awareness, and, like, it can be uncomfortable and kind of, like, it's, like, not flattering. So the first step, he's like, is just admit that you don't want to wake up. It's so much easier to be asleep, like, and it is, like, it's like in the Matrix, which you've seen, right? Like, why didn't I take the blue pill, right? Like, it's just so much easier to not be aware. And so the second step he's talking about is the readiness to understand, to listen, and to challenge. So, like, first step is to realize, man, I really didn't want to fucking wake up. But now that I'm starting to wake up, then the next thing is to be like, okay, now that I'm waking up, like, to do the work, I need to start to, like, understand, I need to start to listen, I need to start, like, challenging my beliefs, I need to start looking at this stuff, which I usually generally refer to as the work. Like, the second step is doing the work. And he said it's not just your religious beliefs, your political beliefs, your social beliefs, your psychological beliefs, but all of them. Like, be ready to fucking, like, as he says here, a readiness to repraise them all. Like, to, like, look at everything, challenge everything that you've believed, And that's, like, kind of the Socratic method in a way, too. Just, like, continuously ask questions. The first step to wisdom is to realize you don't know anything, Like, a wise man knows that he's not wise, because there's more to learn, there's more to know. Like, yeah, a fool is the one who thinks that he's wise when he knows nothing. Yeah, the wise man knows he knows nothing and operates from there. Like, so does that make any more sense?
A little bit.
So what could be made more clear, I suppose? Like,
I just don't know how to do this.
So you want to know how, like, so there's a how and a doing, like a howdy do, so to speak, right? So, I mean, in this part, like, the first step, you're actually already beyond the first step, because you have already started asking questions. You have already chosen to start to be more aware of, like, yourself and just of things. So really, you're beyond the first step. And as you go further into this kind of thing, it's like what I've told you before that we've talked about, right? Where, you know, it's just, it's gonna be hard. You'll run into challenges, you'll run into people, you'll run into circumstances, like how I ran into challenges with my family, or even like with your mom and things like that. There's just people that are not going to see the world the way that you see the world. And there's going to be people in your life that are close to you that are not going to ask the same questions that you're asking. They're just not on the same path. They might get there or they might not, but you just love them anyway. You just let them be, and that's part of the love, and learning to love and just letting everything be as it is, and learning to just see them for who they are and where they're at, and not wanting to change them. So the first step is the readiness to admit that, like, it is easier to stay asleep. But since you've already taken the first step, like, once you start down the path, there's kind of really no turning back. Like, you're just gonna keep going, you know? Like, that's just how it works. And then there's the second step, which you have started to do too. You're already doing it by reading the book or asking the questions that you're asking. Like, you are challenging the beliefs that you've been told. So you're asking things like, well, hey, so I'm afraid of, like, things like death, you know, like, what does it mean, like, if I can't say my goodbyes? Or, like, what does it mean, like, if I'm not, you know, like you said, awake before I die, you know? Like, you're asking questions. You're already doing these things. You're asking about, like, you know, hey, like, can you really love me, you know? Like, and you're asking, hey, like, would you choose happiness? So, like, you've already been programmed with some beliefs around those things, around, like, death, and around, like, what love is and, like, what happiness is. But you're asking questions to be like, so what does that really mean, you know? And you're starting to reevaluate those beliefs that you've taken on and creating new beliefs around that. So you're doing the work, which is the second step. You're challenging those beliefs, you know? And what he's saying here is the second step is just whatever belief you have, whatever it is, just challenge it, you know, think about it. So you're already doing the second step, just, you know, piece by piece. It's not like somebody's going to sit down in one night and literally challenge every single belief they've ever had. That's impossible. But you just always do that, is basically what the work is. Like, every day, and any time that you come up where you're like, oh shit, I'm believing this, and, like, you got to wonder and ask yourself, is that an empowering belief? Is that serving my higher good? Or is that a limiting belief? Like, is it keeping me small? Is it, like, keeping me out, you know, is it keeping me away from my higher good, my highest good, you know? And your highest good means, like, is it serving you? Is it positive? Like, is it good for you? Is that belief good for Milo? And only you can decide that. Only you can choose that. Because somebody else might have the same belief and it's not good for you, but it's good for them. You know, that's why I've said for a long time, like, I don't need you or want you to believe what I believe, because, like, what works for me won't necessarily work for you. But the process of asking the questions and, like, evaluating those beliefs, that's a principle. That's like a universal thing. So through that process, you can arrive at your truth and I can arrive at my truth. And they may be different, even though we used the exact same principle. We used the same method of asking questions and evaluating our beliefs. So you're already doing the second step. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, like, there's another question I had, like, so, like, I used to think that I am a quiet kid at school. But I also messaged you about, like, the saying, good things come to people who wait.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I've waited, I've just lived, and through days and days, and I've waited, and more people have come up to me, and we've talked, and I've been given the chance to talk to people, and I've taken those chances. And so, like, should I still stay surrendered, not give up, but surrender to just waiting and have patience, even though it might take a while, but in the longer run, it will be better.
So I guess, like, the question that comes to my mind is, like, is there an outcome that you're looking for when you say, like, that you're waiting? Like, are you waiting for something? Or, like, so, like, when you say that you're waiting, what does that mean? Like, what... That kind of presupposes that you're waiting for something, or waiting for something to arrive, or some outcome to be achieved or recognized.
I'm just waiting for, like, more than what I had. And I have more than what I had, so I've reached, like, my supposed goal. And I don't want to be, like, greedy and be, like, take a lot, like, get, like, a lot, you know?
So when you say that you want more than what you have, or you want more, like, what does that mean? Like, what is, like, are you talking about, like...
What I had was, like, just me, and that was fine. But I was talking to Mom about this too. I was like, I want, you know, to have friends at school, other, like, that I have classes with, you know, because it just makes the day more fun,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's true. And I've been up in my room and I've just hung out with me, and I've had a lot of fun just hanging out with me, so I know I don't need anybody to really be happy, which is good, you know. And I've gotten more than just me at school now. I've gotten a couple of friends, and it's pretty fun, you know.
So then the question, I think, then is, like, so the relationships that you're having, and the more relationships that you're having, the friends and the contacts and the people that you're running into, that is increasing, and you're wondering if you should continue to just surrender to the process and be patient, or what was the flip side of that? Like,
I don't know, just like, because I'm not like a really outgoing, talkative guy either. Like, I'm not like just gonna be walking. I'm not like a kid that will just straight up walk into class and start talking. Like, I follow the directions, you know.
mm-hmm.
I do what I'm told, and I'm just trying to get through the school day and having little pieces of fun while I'm at it.
So I think one of the things that you'll come to find out is about, like, the law of attraction of anything, and it's like you attract things to you that you have within you, that you're vibrating with, the frequency that you're on. And I think probably what you're witnessing with this increase in relationships that you are experiencing in school is that you are also increasing your relationship with yourself, right? Because you're asking these questions, you're evaluating yourself, you're doing this inner work. And so you're relating to yourself differently. So as you change how you relate to yourself, you're going to see this reflected in your external world. You're going to see how other people relate to you differently. So as you become more comfortable and more loving and more, like, accepting and, like, relate to yourself in those ways, you're going to see more people come to you and relate to you in the same way. So that's what you're seeing, is, like, so there's not about being greedy. And this is something that I'm working on right now with my money, you know, like in my money story, you know, and, like, how do I attract or repel money, and what's my relationship with money? So, like, and you hear people do this all the time, as they change their relationship with money and the stories they were given as children, and how they start to see how they either repel it or attract it. It's the same thing. As they change inside that relationship, then the money comes to them, you know, like it's an attraction thing, you know, like as we spoke about, remember when we were living together in my house, where, like, because Jim talks about this, where, like, money doesn't come from work, you know, and money is energy. It's not about how hard you work. It's not about how many hours or any of that stuff. It's literally, everything is about how do you relate to it on the inside. And that's why the inner work is absolutely critical, because everything out here is just a mirror of what is on the inside. So I think you're seeing the increase in relationships because you're relating to yourself. You're increasing your relationship with yourself. So it's not about being greedy. Don't look at it that way. Certainly don't put a negative spin on it, because as you relate to yourself more and more, the more you're going to have with that. The other night, I did an audio journal about this, about how my currency, the way that I see my currency, and part of the reason, like with my money story, is that like I don't necessarily, like, money in my bank account right now in this moment doesn't necessarily mean near as much to me, and I'm working on that, as my relationships with other people. My relationships with other people is like paramount, and I have the best relationships with people. I have a great relationship with you. I have a great relationship with Odin. I have a great relationship with your mom, even though we're divorced. I have a great relationship with every single person in my life. There's literally nobody that I don't get along with. I have the best relationships, and relationships are my currency, because like the way I look at it is that like I bring value to relationships. Any relationship that I'm in, I bring value to it. And I've always thought, or at least I've thought for a long time, that like that's how I get things in my life. I mean, that's how I manifested. I mean, look at the house that I live in, right? Stephanie's house. Dude, she is so great with like me and like how I pay her rent or don't pay her rent, and it's completely furnished. I manifested that. What about Al and the house that I rented from him, breaking the lease? And I still owe Al like 3 months of rent, and it's been almost a year since I paid him. But it's the relationship that I have with Stephanie and with Al that allows me to even have that in my life. If it was anybody else, neither one of those people would tolerate that type of thing. You know what I mean? The things that I have to navigate and negotiate with your mom, like, because of the relationship I have with her, I'm able to because of the relationship that I have with her. If it was anybody else, your mom wouldn't tolerate it. So my relationships are my currency. Now I'm working on the actual money in my bank account because I actually need that energy to do other things. So I definitely have work to do on that. But I've done a lot of how I relate to myself is reflected in all of my relationships with other people. So I have a pretty fucking good relationship with myself, and it shows up in every relationship that I have. So I have a lot of different relationships. I don't have a shitload of friends that I go and hang out with, but I know a lot of people, and the people that I know, all of them fucking love me, which must mean that I have a pretty good relationship, and most of myself I love. Now I've had to do a lot of work on that, and I've done a lot of what you've done as far as like being alone. I've suffered a lot of privation, which means that I've spent a lot of time by myself, without like friends around or a significant other in my life or really anyone else. I've spent lots of time just by myself, and that gave me the opportunity to reflect on myself and do that work, and like as I go through these different programs, there's always tools and other ways to look at myself. But that is a really long answer to like what you're seeing. So don't view it as negative. I would say just keep surrendering to the process, in the sense of like just don't force it, just trust it and keep doing what you're doing. And I think you'll keep seeing an increase in the number of relationships, but not just that, because it's not quantity, it's quality. You're going to start to see an increase of quality of the relationships too, as you start to change the relationship with yourself and gain a better quality relationship with yourself. So, but that's the law of attraction. You can take that with anything. A lot of people do it with money or like whatever they're attracting into their life. But whatever you attract, whatever you have in your life, you're responsible for. And it's directly related to how you're dealing with it. How do you relate to it on the inside? Yeah. Does that make sense? So, yeah, so it's not greedy. It's just a natural byproduct of you doing the work. So don't look at it as like you're being greedy. Yeah. Bless you.
Thank you.
So where are we at, Chief?
It's 7:57.
Okay.
Yeah, 7:57.
Okay.
That's all the questions I had.
All right, sounds good.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast and secretly recording me.
It's just a way to get it
CIA.
candid. Just get it candid, man. You know what I mean? I just wanted to have, like, this is the... I knew that when I actually recorded you and you knew you were being recorded, it was going to be like... You would be sheepish, you know, and just kind of withdrawn a little bit. But, like, as soon as we stopped recording the video, you opened right up. And I'm like, damn it, man. Like, this is what I'm going for. This is what I wanted. We had the best conversation on the last half of the podcast. You know? So, that's okay. And I just appreciate you letting me record you. So,
All right.
I love you.
I love you too.